The woman was sitting in my chair at the Christmas table, wearing my husband's gray sweater and feeding my son mashed potatoes with my spoon. My mother-in-law didn't look embarrassed. She simply moved the baby blanket from the spare chair and said, "You can stand for a minute, Natalie. We need to talk like adults." Then my husband lifted his eyes from his wine glass and said softly enough that only cruelty could have made it calm, "Marissa is staying tonight." My name is Natalie Vance. I'm 33 years old. I thought Christmas Eve would be the night my marriage cracked, but I didn't understand yet that my father was about to hear 4 words from me and become the man my husband should have feared all along. For 9 seconds, nobody moved. That's what I remember most. Not the tree. Not the silver reindeer candles on the sideboard. Not even the smell of rosemary potatoes burning slightly at the edges, because my mother-in-law, Elaine Vance, always overcooked them and called it rustic. I remember the silence. My daughter Lily was asleep against my chest in her red velvet dress, her tiny fist closed around the necklace my mother gave me before she died. My son Noah, barely 2, sat in his booster seat with potato on his cheek, staring between me and the woman in my chair as if he knew something was wrong, but didn't have the words yet. Marissa Vale smiled at him. That smile did something to me, not because she was beautiful. She was. Polished, soft waves, diamond studs, the kind of woman who knew how to look harmless while sitting inside another woman's life. It was because she smiled at my child like she had already been practicing. I looked at my husband, Daniel, and said, "Tell her to get up." He didn't. His mother reached for her wine. "Natalie, don't make a scene." A scene. That was the word they always used when I reacted to something they had done. When Daniel forgot our anniversary and Elaine said I was keeping score. When he spent our emergency savings on a truck he didn't need and I was humiliating him by asking questions. When I found Marissa's name on his phone under M Valley Plumbing and he laughed so hard I apologized for checking. Now she was at my Christmas table wearing his sweater and I was the scene. Daniel rubbed his forehead like I was exhausting him. "Mom already knows. Dad knows too. We wanted to wait until after dinner, but you came in early." I stared at him. "Came in early? I live here." Elaine gave a tiny sigh. "Technically, this is my house." That sentence landed colder than the December air outside. We had moved in with Elaine 6 months earlier after Daniel insisted it would help us save for a down payment. I had been paying half the utilities, buying groceries, cooking for everyone, taking Elaine to her cardiology appointments, and cleaning bathrooms that were never mine when they needed scrubbing. But now, suddenly, it was her house. Marissa lowered the spoon and said, "I can go sit somewhere else." Her voice was gentle, too gentle. Elaine touched her arm. "No, sweetheart, you've done nothing wrong." I almost laughed. Instead, I took 1 step toward Noah's chair. Daniel stood. Not fast, not aggressive, just enough to block me. "Don't," he said. That was when fear entered the room. Until then, I had been angry. Shaking, but angry. The kind of angry that burns hot enough to hold you upright. But when my husband put his body between me and my son, while his mistress sat beside him, something inside me went very still. I said, "Move." He looked at his mother. Elaine set down her glass. "Natalie, you need to cool off. Take the baby for a drive. Come back when you can speak respectfully." "With my son here?" "He's fine," Daniel said. Noah's lip trembled. I reached around Daniel, but he caught my wrist. Not hard enough to bruise, hard enough to remind me he could. Marissa looked away, and that was how I knew she had seen him do it before. I whispered, "Let go of me." Daniel released me like he was doing me a favor. "You're unstable tonight." Elaine stood then, smoothing her red blouse. "Pack a small bag. Lily can go with you. Noah should stay. He needs consistency." Consistency. That was what they called stealing my child on Christmas Eve. I looked at Daniel, waiting for the man who had held my hand in the hospital, who had cried when Noah was born, who had promised me after. Lily's delivery that I would never be alone in that house. He picked up his wine. "Mom's right," he said. "You're not thinking clearly." Something broke then, but not loudly. I didn't scream. I didn't throw anything. I didn't beg. I walked upstairs with Lily still asleep against me, put diapers, formula, pajamas, and my phone charger into the blue overnight bag with the broken zipper. My hands moved like they belonged to someone else. At the top of the stairs, I heard Elaine say, "She'll come crawling back by morning." Daniel answered, "She has nowhere else to go." That was his mistake, because I did. I had one place. I carried Lily into the freezing night without my coat fully buttoned, backed the car out with numb fingers, and drove 23 minutes across town while Christmas lights blurred through my windshield. My father's porch was dark except for the yellow bulb over the door. I knocked once, then again. When Richard Calloway opened it in his flannel pajama pants, his face changed before I said a word. He looked at Lily's bare sock, my shaking hand, the overnight bag slumped at my feet. "Dad," I said, and my voice finally failed. "They wouldn't let me take Noah." My father didn't ask who. He didn't ask why. He reached into the pocket of his coat hanging by the door, took out his truck keys, and said 4 words in a voice I had never heard from him before. "They touched my blood." My father did not raise his voice. That was what made it terrifying. Richard Calloway had been a union electrician for 38 years, a widower for 6, and a quiet man for all of them. He fixed things. He measured twice. He kept receipts in labeled envelopes and called every waitress, "Ma'am." But standing in that doorway with Lily whimpering against my shoulder and my son trapped in a house with people who had just erased me, my father became something older than anger. He took Lily from my arms gently. "Inside, warm her up. Dad, you need shoes that aren't slippers and a coat that closes." He nodded toward the hall closet. "Move, Natalie." I moved, not because he was harsh, but because for the first time that night, someone sounded certain. He laid Lily on the couch, tucked his heavy quilt around her, and handed me my mother's old wool coat. It still smelled faintly like cedar and lavender. The smell almost took my knees out. "Call the police," I said, fumbling with the buttons. "Please, they won't let me take Noah." Dad's jaw flexed once. "We're calling from the truck." "Is that a bad idea?" "It's the only idea." He grabbed his phone, his keys, and the metal flashlight he kept by the back door. Then he paused beside the fireplace mantel. My parents' wedding photo sat there in a silver frame, Mom in lace, Dad with too much hair and a shy smile. He touched 2 fingers to the frame. Then he turned off every light in the house except the porch bulb and said, "Let's go get my grandson." The truck roared awake like it had been waiting. I sat in the passenger seat, shaking so violently the seatbelt rattled against the door. Dad handed me his phone. "Dial 911, speaker." When the dispatcher answered, my voice came out broken. I told her my name, the address, that my husband and his mother had forced me out and refused to let me take my 2-year-old son. "Is there a custody order in place?" she asked. "No," I said. "We're married. He's my child." "Is your son in immediate danger?" I saw Daniel's hand around my wrist, Elaine's mouth forming the word unstable, Marissa smiling at Noah like she had already won him. "Yes," I said. Dad glanced at me, but did not interrupt. The dispatcher said officers would meet us there. "Tell them," Dad said, eyes on the road. There was physical restraint. I swallowed. My husband grabbed me when I tried to pick up Noah. The dispatcher's tone sharpened. "Did he injure you?" "No, but he stopped me from getting to my child." Dad's hands tightened on the wheel. Snow had begun falling, light and mean, dusting the windshield. Houses glowed on both sides of the road, warm with families who had not been replaced at their own tables. At the stoplight near St. Mark's, Dad finally spoke. "Has he done that before?" I looked out the window. "Grabbed me, sometimes." "How many is sometimes?" I couldn't answer. That was answer enough. He nodded once, slowly, like he was filing something away in a place Daniel would regret. When we turned onto Elaine Street, 2 police cruisers were already parked outside her white Colonial. Every window blazed with light. And there, on the porch, stood Daniel, in shirt sleeves, holding Noah. My whole body lunged before the truck even stopped. Dad caught my arm, not to hold me back, but to steady me. Slow. Let them see you calm. I am not calm. I know, but you're his mother. Act like the judge is watching. That sentence cut through the panic. I stepped out into the snow. Noah saw me and started screaming, "Mama!" He reached for me so hard his little body arched away from Daniel. Daniel tightened his grip and forced a smile at the officers. "She's emotional," he said. "Postpartum stuff. We were trying to prevent her from driving with both kids in this condition." Lily was 10 months old. He had practiced that sentence. One officer, a woman with a blonde braid tucked into her collar, turned to me. "Ma'am, are you Natalie Vance?" "Yes," I held out my arms. "That is my son." Daniel shifted Noah higher. "We're not denying that. We just think he should stay here tonight until she settles down." Elaine appeared behind him in pearls and slippers, Marissa hovering at her shoulder in Daniel's sweater. My father stepped forward. He didn't look at Daniel. He looked at Elaine. "You let him do this," he said. Elaine's face pinched. "Richard, this is a family matter." Dad's voice dropped even lower. "No, it became a legal matter when you kept a child from his mother." The female officer looked at Daniel. "Sir, hand the child to his mother." Daniel blinked. "I'm his father, and she's his mother. There's no order saying she can't have him. Hand him over." For 1 second, I thought he wouldn't. Then Noah sobbed, "Mama, please." And even Daniel understood how that sounded with 2 police officers watching. He passed my son to me. Noah clung to my neck with both arms, wet-faced and shaking. I held him so tight he squeaked. "I've got you," I whispered. "I've got you, baby." Elaine started crying then. Not real crying, the public kind. "She's destroying Christmas," she said. My father finally looked at Daniel. "No," he said. "You did." Marissa lowered her eyes, and Dad saw the sweater, his sweater. Years ago, my mother had knitted it for Daniel after we got engaged. Gray wool, one dark blue stitch hidden near the cuff, because Mom said every handmade thing needed a secret. Dad pointed at Marissa's sleeve. "Take that off." Daniel stepped in front of her. "You don't get to order people around in my mother's house." Dad smiled then. It was small, cold, and nothing like happiness. "You're right," he said. "I'll save my orders for court." Court. The word changed the porch. Daniel's face twitched first. Elaine stopped crying mid-breath. Even Marissa looked up. Because men like Daniel do not fear tears. They expect tears. They prepare for pleading, panic, apology, exhaustion. They do not prepare for paperwork. The female officer asked if I had somewhere safe to stay. "With me," Dad said. She took my statement in the driveway while Noah trembled under my coat and Lily slept in Dad's truck. I told her everything I could say without breaking apart. The mistress at the table, Daniel blocking me, his hand on my wrist, Elaine telling me to leave Noah. When I finished, she gave me a case number and looked directly at me. "Go file for emergency custody as soon as the court opens." "After Christmas?" I asked. "Emergency magistrate may be available sooner. Call first thing and document everything." Dad was already pulling a small notebook from his glove box. Of course he had one. On the ride home, Noah fell asleep with one hand fisted in my coat. I kept touching his hair, counting breaths, afraid that if I blinked too long, someone would take him again. Dad drove past his own street. "Where are we going?" I whispered. "Hospital. I'm not hurt." "Your wrist is red." I looked down. In the porch light, I hadn't noticed. 4 faint marks circled my skin where Daniel's fingers had pressed. "It's nothing." Dad's eyes stayed on the road. Tonight, nothing becomes something. At the emergency room, a nurse photographed my wrist. Doctor wrote the words, "mild contusion and patient reports, domestic restraint." Noah woke up crying, and Dad walked him around the waiting room, pointing at the Christmas decorations like they were museum exhibits. At 3:12 a.m., We reached Dad's house. He made grilled cheese sandwiches. Not because anyone was hungry, but because dads think food can hold the world together for 10 more minutes. I sat at the kitchen table while my children slept in the den and stared at my phone. 46 missed calls. Daniel, you made this ugly. Elaine, bring Noah back before this gets worse. Daniel, you embarrassed my mother in front of police. Elaine, a good mother doesn't weaponize children. Then one from Marissa. I almost deleted it. Dad saw my thumb hover. Open it. The message was only 6 words. I'm sorry. He said you knew. For a moment, the room tilted. Dad read it over my shoulder. Don't answer. She knew enough to sit there. Yes, he said. And now she knows enough to be useful. By 8 in the morning, Christmas had arrived like an insult. Dad was dressed in his navy suit, the one he wore to funerals and bank meetings. He handed me coffee and a yellow legal pad. We write everything. Dates, times, names, money you paid, times he grabbed you, times his mother threatened you. I don't remember all of it. You remember more than you think. So I wrote. I wrote until my hand cramped. I wrote about Daniel calling me crazy whenever I questioned him, about Elaine hiding my car keys once because I needed to calm down, about the savings account emptied without telling me, about Marissa's fake plumbing contact, about last night. Every sentence felt like digging glass out of skin. At 10:04, Dad's phone rang. He listened for less than a minute, said, "Thank you, Ruth," and hung up. Who was that? Retired clerk from family court. Emergency judges hearing protection petitions today at noon. My stomach dropped. Today? Today. Dad, I don't have a lawyer. He opened his worn leather address book. You do now. The lawyer was named Celia Grant. She had silver hair, red lipstick, and the calm expression of a woman who had watched worse men lie better. She met us outside the courthouse in a green wool coat. After reading the police report and hospital note, she looked at me and said, "He will try to make you sound unstable. Do not defend your emotions. State facts." I cried. Good. Humans cry. Inside, Daniel was already there, with Elaine and Marissa. Marissa was no longer wearing the sweater. Daniel smiled at me like we were still married in public. "Nat, this is insane. Let's talk." Dad stepped between us. "You talk to counsel." Daniel's eyes hardened. "You're destroying your daughter's family." Dad leaned close enough that only we heard him. "No, I'm burying the lie you called a family." The hearing lasted 17 minutes. Daniel said I had been hysterical. Elaine said I was overwhelmed. Marissa said nothing until the judge asked if she was present at dinner. She looked at Daniel, then at me. "Yes," she whispered. And Natalie asked for her son. They wouldn't let her take him. Daniel went white. The judge signed the temporary order, both children with me. Daniel supervised visits only, Elaine not to remove them from my care. When we stepped outside, snow was falling again. Dad took the papers, folded them once, and placed them in his inside coat pocket like a weapon. Then Daniel's voice cracked behind us. "You think this is over?" Dad turned. "No," he said. "Now it starts." Daniel did not come at us in the parking lot. He was too smart for that. Instead, he lifted his phone and began recording. "Merry Christmas," he said loudly, voice shaking with manufactured heartbreak. "My wife took my children from me because we had an argument." Celia Grant stepped in front of me so fast her green coat snapped in the wind. "Mr. Vance," she said, "if you post any image of these children connected to active litigation, I will file before dinner." Daniel lowered the phone. Elaine grabbed his sleeve. "Danny, stop." But his eyes stayed on me. Not on Noah, not on Lily, me. That was when I finally understood. This had never been about losing the children. It was about losing control of the woman who raised them. Dad drove us home without turning on the radio. The kids were Strapped in the back, Noah clutching a courthouse vending machine bare, Lily chewing the edge of her mitten. For 5 minutes, there was only the thrum of tires over slush. Then Dad said, "Change your passwords." I blinked. What? Bank, email, phone, social media, anything he knows. Celia, following us in her car, called at the same moment. Dad put her on speaker. "Richard is right," she said. "Also freeze your credit. Pull statements. If you shared accounts, we need records before money disappears." My mouth went dry. He already emptied savings once. Then we moved fast. Christmas afternoon became a war room. Dad's kitchen table disappeared under papers, laptops, coffee mugs, and the children's crayons. Celia worked from her office by phone. Dad called the bank manager by first name. I changed passwords while nursing Lily and answering questions about dates that made my hands sweat. At 2:37 p.m., we found it. 3 days before Christmas, Daniel had transferred $18,400 from our joint savings to an account with only his name on it. The memo line said, "House Fund." I laughed once. A cracked, ugly sound. Dad did not laugh. He wrote the amount on the legal pad, underlined it twice, and said, "There's our motive." At 4:10, my phone buzzed. Marissa again. "He told me you were separated. He said Elaine was helping with the kids because you left." A second message came before I could breathe. "I'm pregnant." The kitchen went completely silent. Even Noah looked up from his blocks. Dad took the phone from my hand, read it, and set it face down like it was hot. "I'm going to be sick," I whispered. He pushed a glass of water toward me. "Not yet. Later. Right now, we save that message." I wanted to hate Marissa. Part of me did. But another part, a tired and humiliating part, saw the trap she had stepped into and recognized the shape of it. Daniel had lied to both of us. Only I had given him children, years, and my mother's handmade sweater. By evening, Elaine violated the order. She showed up at Dad's house wearing a fur-trimmed coat and righteous grief, banging on the door hard enough to wake Lily. "Open this door, Richard. I know my grandchildren are in there." Dad looked through the peephole, then at me. "Take the kids to the back bedroom." My legs shook. What if she has Daniel? Then he can meet the police twice in 24 hours. I carried Lily. Noah dragged his bear and whispered, "Bad grandma." My heart split. "No, baby," I said automatically. Dad from the hallway said, "Yes." I stared at him. He softened only slightly. Children need truth in small cups, not poison in sugar. From the bedroom, I heard him open the front door, chain still latched. Elaine's voice sliced through the gap. "You have no right to keep them from their father's family." Dad answered, "Judge says otherwise. She's unstable." "Then why did you try to keep the toddler and send her out with the baby in the cold?" Silence. Then Elaine hissed, "You will regret making an enemy of us." Dad's reply came calm and clear. "Elaine, I was married to a woman who died slowly. I have already met regret. You don't scare me." The porch boards creaked as she stepped back. "You think Natalie can survive alone?" That was the line. The old line. The one Daniel had built my cage from. Dad unlatched the chain. I rushed out, terrified, but he only stood in the doorway, broad and still. "She is not alone," he said. "And tomorrow we inventory every dollar, every threat, every lie. So if you want to help your son, tell him to stop digging." Elaine left, but at midnight my phone lit again. This time it was Daniel. A photo. Noah's blue blanket on Elaine's guest bed, the one I thought I'd left behind. Under it, Daniel had written, "You can't watch them forever." Dad read it once, then he picked up his keys. "Where are you going?" I asked. "To install cameras," he said, "and to make one more call." "Who?" He looked at the picture, then at the sleeping children. "The kind of man your husband should have hoped I didn't know." The man my father called was named Victor Reyes. I knew him only as Vic from the bowling league, a retired sheriff's deputy with a limp, a tool belt, and eyes that missed nothing. By 2 a.m, he was on Dad's porch installing motion lights and cameras while Dad changed every lock. Vic watched the video Daniel had sent, then looked at me. "That's not a message," he said. "That's a threat." Celia filed before breakfast. By noon, the judge had the screenshot, the police report, the hospital note, and Elaine's porch visit. Daniel's supervised visits were suspended pending review. Elaine was warned that one more attempt at contact would mean contempt. Daniel called me from a blocked number that night. I didn't answer, so he drove past Dad's house at 1:43 a.m. The new camera caught his truck slowing by the curb. At 1:44, Dad was already awake, standing in the dark living room with his phone in one hand and Noah's stuffed bear in the other, because my son had dropped it on the way to bed. He did not go outside. That mattered later. He called the police. He sent the footage to Celia. He made coffee. And when I came downstairs shaking, he said, "This is what men like him do when the door stops opening." 2 weeks later, Daniel lost control in the courthouse hallway. Marissa had given a sworn statement. Daniel told her we were separated. Elaine told her I was fragile and not really mothering. Daniel had promised her the house fund was for their apartment. Their apartment. I read that line 3 times before it stopped hurting and started helping. Celia used the bank transfers, the texts, the threats, and the Christmas Eve police call like bricks, building a wall between my children and the people who thought blood could be negotiated. Daniel was ordered to return half the savings immediately. His visit stayed supervised. Elaine was barred from contacting me or the kids, except through counsel. The divorce took 9 months. Daniel fought over everything: the crib, the car seats, even my mother's necklace. But he never got what he really wanted again. He never got to decide when I saw my children. He never got to call me unstable and watch the room believe him. He never got to make me stand in my own life while another woman sat in my chair. Marissa had her baby that summer, a boy. She sent one photo through Celia with a note that said, "I'm sorry I believed him." I didn't answer for a long time. Then I wrote back, "Protect your son earlier than I protected myself." That was all. By the following spring, I had a small rental with yellow curtains, a scratched kitchen table, and 2 bedrooms full of mismatched furniture Dad found, fixed, sanded, and painted. Noah slept through the night again. Lily learned to walk by grabbing Dad's fingers and bossing him around in nonsense syllables. Some evenings after work, Dad would come by with groceries he pretended were extras. He never said, "I told you so." He never asked why I stayed so long. One night, while he repaired a loose cabinet hinge, I finally said, "Were you disappointed in me?" He stopped turning the screwdriver. Then he looked at me like I had handed him something breakable. "Natalie," he said, "you came home carrying both my grandbabies, one in your arms and one in your heart. That wasn't weakness. That was escape." A year after that Christmas Eve, we spent the holiday at Dad's house. Noah put the star on the tree from my father's shoulders. Lily sat in my old chair, wearing pajamas with crooked reindeer, smearing frosting across her cheeks. Dad carved the turkey badly, like always, and set an extra plate for my mother, because he still did that on holidays. Outside, snow began to fall. For a second, I saw myself on that porch again. Cold, terrified, whispering, "Dad, open the door." Then Lily laughed, Noah shouted, and my father looked across the table at me with those steady eyes. The door was open now, not just his, mine. And if you would have opened that door for your daughter too, tell me in the comments. If this story stayed with you, tell me in the comments what you would have done in my place. And if you want more stories like this, please like the video and subscribe to the channel.